Hey, this is Mike. Thank you for joining me today. I'm going to share what I believe is really about the most important thing, or one of the most important things we share in all of our material. It is two simple principles that I learned as a college student. They stuck with me. It helped me as a parent. It's helped me in the workplace. And it is really about the most practical advice I've ever received. And I'm going to share that today. My senior year in college, I'm getting ready to student teach, and I'm about ready to go to a lecture on classroom management. I was all ears because most people that student teach, when they student teach, it's for a classroom. Kids are seated. Maybe there's 20 of them, and maybe they're only 6 years old, right? When I was student teaching, I was getting ready to be a band director. So student teaching for me was 200 teenagers hyped up on Mountain Dew, armed with trombones, cymbals, and trumpets. And that was the environment that I was going to have to control as the guy from college who's in doing his student teaching. And I was afraid because I remembered what I used to do when I was a high school kid to those student teachers. And I had karmic retribution syndrome. I was scared to death that what I had done to all of those guys was going to happen to me. And I wanted to make sure that what went around didn't come around. And I did not want to lose control. So when it came down to the lecture on classroom management, I was ready. My professor was named Dennis Fisher. So the first thing that Mr. Fisher said was to be firm, fair, and consistent. And obviously that's not rocket science. You know what firm, fair, and consistent mean. What I'd like to do is to unpack something that may not be obvious for each one of those. For firm, for parents, this is what I would suggest. The way that I think of it is those old-time scales where you put weights on this side and you try and get it to balance. For us as parents, we don't want it to balance. Whatever they did, we want to make sure that the scale tips in our favor on the discipline or the correction side, so that our child, when they think about doing this again, they're thinking, oh, I remember I was going to do that. It was super fun, but then mom and dad did this, and it was definitely not worth it. It has to be firm, or it's just not going to work. So that's the first part, firm. Fair means mom and dad, you can't play favorites. If you have more than one child, so if you got two kids, very good chance that one of your children is going to be easier to raise than the other. And so when that easy to raise child does something, you've got to treat them just like the other child. So if the easy to raise child does something that the other kid would have gotten in trouble for, the easy to raise kid needs to get in trouble too. It needs to be fair because the whole family is watching and you can't have favorites. The third part is to be consistent, and this is the hard part. So it's hard for mom and dad to be consistent because sometimes you're just tired and the kids are acting up. You know you need to do something about it, but dinner's not ready, dishes aren't done, there's stuff in the laundry, there's stuff that needs to be folded, and you have stuff in the washer, and if you move it into the dryer, now you'll have more stuff that has to be folded, and now the kid's acting up. So maybe I can help you with a little motivation, because what I'll do, and I have failed at this plenty myself, is I think about those discipline opportunities as casting seeds into the future of my family and my kids. But these are good seeds because I took the time to discipline my child. And so I cast those seeds in the front, and eventually a year or 2 years or 5 years down the road, those seeds that we planted are good. If you're not consistent and you discipline haphazardly or sometimes not at all and then other times too harsh, what happens is you're not planting those seeds, and in that case, somebody else is going to plant those seeds. And those seeds are not going to be good. It's going to be thorns, it's going to be thistles, and God forbid, it's going to be goat heads like we have in Texas. They are the worst. It is from the spawn of hell, those plants are, right? Awful. And that is not what we want to have to walk through down the road. So we want to be firm, fair, and consistent. And that was the first part of Mr. Fisher's advice. The second part was this. He said, don't smile for the first 6 weeks. And I remember I was like 22 at the time. And I remember thinking, Oh, I understand what he's saying. He's not talking about smiling, my facial expression. What he's talking about is respect. And his message to me, and I took it, was that the very first thing you need is you need the respect of your students before anything else. And I am glad that I took that, because I was seeing 200 students a day as an elementary music teacher. I was seeing almost 2,000 students every 2 weeks. And I started off my career as I was mean as a snake. I was very firm with those kids. And by the end of my career, within a year actually, I could say, you guys are starting to get out of control. And you remember how I was at the beginning of the year, right? I was mean Mr. K, but now I'm nice Mr. K. You determine if it's mean Mr. K who teaches or nice Mr. K. So who do you want to teach today? And the kids would say, we want nice Mr. K. Then that means if I'm talking, then you don't talk and you guys start paying attention, all right? And they say, yes, Mr. K. And so they knew it, and they knew that I could dial it back and be mean if I needed to, or firm or strict, right? But they preferred the other, and the kids understood, and they knew I wasn't messing around when I said, if I want you to be quiet, I actually wanted you to be quiet. I was never joking. And that garnered respect. So that, for you parents that are saying, I just want the content, if you can be firm, fair, consistent, and garner respect of your children, you can turn the video off now and check out and go check out something else. But if you want to know how this worked for me and the moment that I realized what amazing advice and how well this worked, stick with me for about one more minute and I'll tell you what happened. By the time I had finished teaching, I was in my 5th year of elementary music, and I was moving on to something else. So I was going to do a huge musical production with every single grade, pre-kinder through 5th grade. And I was rehearsing the 2nd graders, and that was about 300 students. We're in the gym, they're all up on choir risers. And I look back, expecting all the teachers to be there watching their children, right? And they're not. I was the only person in the gym, and there was 200 2nd graders. No, 300 2nd graders in there. And I remember thinking, man, they could bum rush me, attack me, and these kids could kill me if they wanted to. But they weren't. None of those kids was misbehaving. None of the kids was wiggling around more than 2nd graders do. It was quiet, it was orderly, and I could talk in this tone and command that entire room full of kids because I had been so consistent from the day one of my teaching all the way through that they knew exactly what Mr. K wanted. So mom and dad, if you're struggling with discipline or you find yourself saying, if I tell my kids what to do, I'm not sure they're going to listen to me, they have a lack of respect. And that means that you're going to have to play hardball with them for a little while until they start realizing that when mom asks me to do something, she's not kidding. And if I don't do it, the consequences of that are not worth it to me. And so you have to have firmness, you have to be fair, have to be consistent, but you have to have your children's respect. And mom, dad, I don't want that for you. So I hope that you'll take this to heart. I have another discipline video called The Grid, and it tells you how you can discipline your children in a way that won't make them angry. But even if they are angry, we still need to do it because it's the right thing to do, because we want to take those seeds that we cast into the future and make sure that they're the seeds that we planted and the type of fruit that we want to harvest.